Thanks everyone for joining us. As Joe mentioned, this talk is going to be about high stress jobs, which we're all familiar with, and health and nutrition. And there's a wealth of information and studies going on about this particular topic. I'm just going to touch on a few of them that I thought were rather interesting and some that I have a little bit of personal experience with. All right, so let's get started. So I think we all know what stress is. Actually, when I went to research this to find a definitive answer for what is the definition of stress, I couldn't find one. There were just too many. So I kind of chose ones that I thought really looked at them from a little bit different perspective, but were very thorough, and I think most of us can relate to. So of course, stress has to do with mental or physical tension in response to a situation or event. I think that most of us, when we think of stress, that makes sense. And of course, we think there's a normal, psychological and physical response to a particular situation. But this was actually my favorite. Natural body defense against real or imagined danger. Because it really has nothing to do with the specific event. It has to do with our perception of that event. All right, so we know that a hormonal response is what happens to our body when we have stress. And specifically speaking, I'm talking about, situational evaluation stress, not physical stressors that people may be actually under for physical pain or anything like that. We're just talking about psychological stress. So we know the two main stress hormones are adrenaline and cortisol, and I think we're all pretty familiar with that. And the reason why that they respond is for our fight or flight survival response. And they're very useful in that particular kind of situation. But the way that we deal with stress, especially workplace stress, on a much more frequent basis, it's not what these were intended for, and they can actually be very bad for us. You know, it's great if you're trying to get out of a dangerous situation, but if this is your daily work schedule and you are constantly having this response, it can have a lot of negative effects. Okay, let's talk about types of stress. So there are three types of stress. Acute stress, which we know is just a small period of times when we are thinking about something and that gets us to have a certain response. It's thought-induced stress. Maybe you're thinking about a particular deadline you might have at work or some home responsibilities that you have with your children or spouse. Or maybe you're thinking about, a particular situation. Maybe you had an argument with someone or a disagreement, or you're thinking about a meeting that's going to be coming up and you're worried about how that meeting might go. Those are all acute stressors. And those are typical things that we don't really need to worry about. We only need to really start thinking about stress as being negative is when those types of stressors become episodic, or you are constantly in a state of chaos or always late, always stretched too thin. Then your acute stressors can become a real problem, and they can start having negative effects on your health and your behavior. Chronic stress is not just, a lot of times people think that the acute stressors are actually, if they're imposed over and over, they're chronic stress. But really, chronic stress is defined as a particular stressor or situation in which the person experiencing the stress doesn't see a solution or a way out. Okay, this could be anything from something as drastic as abuse or warfare, exactly. Or it could even be something like a very overwhelming type situation at work. Maybe you're extremely understaffed and overworked and there's no solution in sight because they're not hiring anyone and the caseload's not going down. That can also be a case for chronic stress. Okay, we're going to talk specifically today about workplace stress. I thought this was a great quote that I found on the Canadian Mental Association website because of just how it describes it. It talks about, stress is mostly about perception and control of a particular situation. So I think this one's worth reading. Workplace stress then is the harmful physical and emotional response that can happen when there is a conflict between job demands and the employee and the amount of control an employee has over meeting those demands. So sometimes it's not necessarily a negative thing that's causing your stress. It could be your inability to fulfill the responsibilities to the best of your ability.
Or control it.
Or
have
control it.
Control, not necessarily control it, but have input in controlling it.
Exactly.
It may not, I can see you're almost feeling like the requirements, the demands on me are higher than the expectations are higher than I can meet.
Right. I can't meet these expectations, or you worry about meeting these expectations for either a particular situation or even over a long period of time. That goes back to, as medical professionals, often we can be understaffed and have workplace stress about just, you can do the job and you can do the job well, but how long can you be stretched thin and still continue to do the job at the level that you want to do? And it can be the other way as well, where like during this time, not just for healthcare professionals, but where your workload's decreased. And so you're trying to do the very best job you can do, and you're thinking of ways that you can be productive for your company, for yourself. Even if you're, a stay-at-home person, trying to stay productive can also bring on a level of stress because you are perceiving that situation as a situation that's negative and out of your control.
Yes, absolutely, and probably, I don't want to belabor the point if you don't mind, but probably worry, just the fear of what's going, if especially during this crisis, am I going to have a job?
Right,
and what am I going to do?
Exactly.
Because we all need our incomes.
Absolutely.
Everybody. And so I imagine that's probably it's maybe subconscious in some people, but I think during this crisis, that subconscious moved forward pretty far and probably got into the consciousness of a lot of people.
Well,
I was worried. I was worried I was going to have a company.
Right, absolutely. And especially in a time when your normal routine and our normal society ways that we interact, the way that we behave, even the way we shop, all of those ththings are out of your control. So you're trying to control what you can. And so, of course, you're going to be worried about that. Even if you maybe work in, a field like ours that's essential, or, working at a grocery store, you're essential there. But the situation itself is out of your control. And so you might be worried about that. And that's completely normal.
Well, I can tell you one thing for sure. I don't envy the guy or gal that had to stock the toilet paper shelves, because I know that had to be stressful.
Well,
because they were coming in to take it all.
Yeah, I actually talked to, this wasn't too far into it, maybe 3 or 4 weeks into it. I talked to an employee at Target, I think it was, and I was just asking, do you get these things, the disinfectant wipes and the hand sanitizer and all the things that people are really stockpiling? Are you getting them every day, or is it just that you're only getting a limited supply and that's why the shelves are staying empty? And he said, no, we get them just about every day. We stock the shelves. They may not be full, but there is a lot available. And people are rushing in a panic to get these things and the employees can't even get them on the shelves fast enough. And so there's a level of stress there too. And then he told me that then they also worried about the same types of people getting those and worrying about the other people that are going to come in during the day who need them but can't get there, 30 minutes early to get in line. And they worried about that too. So.
Yeah, I found it very odd. I still don't really understand it. I don't understand it, but.
Yeah.
Toilet paper was a commodity.
Yeah. I have yet to find disinfectant wipes. Thank
Me
goodness.
either.
I had some, but
Yeah.
I've yet to find any. I've never seen it.
Thank God we all work at hospitals.
Right?
I would have said nothing else. I'm not admitting to nothing.
Yeah, me either. All right. So let's talk about good stress and bad stress. Believe it or not, some stress is actually considered good. And not just for the fight or flight, you're trying to save your life from a dangerous situation, you're escaping from something, but mildly challenging stimuli for limited periods of time can motivate you, can make your job exciting, can make your marriage exciting, your family life exciting. Planning a vacation, that might be one thing that a lot of people can relate to, can be very stressful, but at the same time, it can also be very exciting.
Base jumpers.
Well, not necessarily that, but sure.
Well, there are stress junkies.
There are.
Yeah.
There are.
And for them, this is good.
Yeah. Well, this is good for anybody. Like maybe a challenging course you might have taken once. You're stressed out about it, but because you know that it's challenging or, subject matter that you're studying, you're going to put more effort into it. It actually can be a positive motivator as long as there is a limited time period.
And I agree with you. And I don't mean to be funny, but it's like this Corona 30, okay? I'll never do this again. There's a lot of stress in getting all of these programs done every day for 5 days for 3 weeks has been stressful, not rewarding, but I see an end in sight. It's the last week. It's week 3. I have 4 more to go after today, and I'm going to be home free.
Yeah.
And I'm taking a couple of weeks off from this, not from life.
Not from life.
No, I can't. I can't.
Then we can talk about what we're mainly focusing on is, and what you hear about when people talk about stress is the bad stress, the things that cause, biological alterations, constantly responding to stressors, no matter how large or small they are. It's all how you perceive them and how your body will react to them can cause dysfunction of these regulatory systems. And they weaken, your adaptive processes. And of course, we know that they give certain increases to disease susceptibility. Okay, so we know all different kinds of jobs can have all different stress levels. And some are just, it goes along with it, are going to be more stressful. A pilot has a very stressful job. A police officer, a firefighter, what are the flight control? Flight control, that's one of the
traffic control.
Yeah, air traffic control. We all know that those are extremely stressful and they're inherent and part of the job. Medical professionals often have a high degree of stress as well. But just generally speaking, what studies have found is any job that requires rapid decision making and continual human contact, those are the ones that can be extremely stressful. Believe it or not, when I researched this over the last 10 years, the list changed back and forth of what's the most stressful job, what are the top 10 and all of those sorts of things. Healthcare definitely makes the list every time, but there were other things that I never even occurred to me. People in sales have a lot of stress, and it's not just commission salespeople, it's because of their interaction with the public.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
fortunately, most of our customers are asleep.
Yes. Out of all healthcare workers, often ICU nurses made the top 3 for most stress.
I believe that.
Yeah.
They have the patient, they have other nurses, they have institutional guidelines and crazy things that they have them do instead of taking care of the patient. Really sick patients, physicians who are barking orders, and families who are worried about their loved one.
Right.
That's one of the toughest jobs I think on the face of this planet.
Right.
Is an ICU nurse.
Exactly. Okay. All right, so here's just general causes of job stress, and we talked about a few of these, but these were the most common ones. Of course, if you're in a toxic working environment, that is going to be stressful. And it could be that acute stressor because maybe you figure out a solution, or you figure out some coping mechanisms, which we're going to talk about later, or maybe you leave, or it can turn into one of those chronic problems because there is no solution. You can't leave your job. There's no end in sight. Workload, of course, long hours, your status. Some people worry about where they are in the food chain at their place of employment, and that can cause a lot of stress. Maybe you want to move up, or maybe where you are feels like too much. It's hard once you move up to get out of that sort of role. You become some sort of administrator. It's difficult to say this was too much for me. People are going to look definitely negatively on that and to take a step back.
They're really not.
But
that's mostly imagined.
That's the impression, however.
Yes. It's a personal failure.
Right. People worry about money, of course. We all understand that. I thought this was really interesting that this made the top list was workplace bullying, but I guess it does occur.
It does.
It
does.
Yeah.
I've seen it with my own eyes.
And I know that we see it sometimes in the operating room. There can be maybe unconventional behavior, high stress situation.
Unconventional behavior or inappropriate behavior?
Both. But sometimes if you are not used to certain behaviors, even if they're maybe not meant to be malicious, they can be disrupting to your workflow.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah, disruptive behavior. Yeah. But I've seen bullying in perfusion departments. I've seen it with colleagues who didn't like each other, and just it's horrible, and it affects the whole team, the whole operating room.
Absolutely.
It affects everyone.
Well, there's always going to be personality issues, but that as professionals, of course, we should put those aside while you're in a limited time frame that you need to work with someone.
Right, exactly.
Because if there is a personal conflict, it makes everyone in the room nervous.
Yes, it does, and it's uncalled for, unnecessary.
Absolutely. Narcissism, thinking that you are the only one that can do the job, that you're afraid to ask for help. That can be a real cause of stress, living up to your own expectations. Any kind of workplace conflict, like we talked about, whether that be personality-wise or even as medical professionals, I know that sometimes we have to call to the attention of either compliance officers or administrators behaviors that we might find to be unsafe for a patient, and that can make people very upset. Very upset, because maybe the person doing the behavior thinks it's a silly rule or whatever, but you feel an obligation to take care of this, and maybe that person is your friend, your colleague, and you enjoy working with them. It can cause a lot of stress having to do something like that, and that could be in any kind of job, any kind of behaviors, or maybe someone's cutting corners in an office with accounting or something. Those types of things. It doesn't have to be a physical conflict, is what I'm trying to say, to really be a stressor.
No, you're right.
Of course, sexual harassment and poor job market. That a lot of people are experiencing that right now. Even if they have their job, the job market's not great. So I have a great job, but what if that thing happens and then I don't have a job? Where am I going to get a job? Yeah.
Well, I think the market in perfusion, speaking directly about, I know this transcends any discipline or any job. But in perfusion, I think the job market is changing.
Yes.
I think it is. And I don't know how far the pendulum's going to swing.
Yeah.
But it was pretty far out there. Usually it has to do with how far it went out one way, with the inertia taking it back the other way. But I'm really hopeful that it doesn't get like it used to be. I'm hoping it doesn't. I want it to be, because it's not good for our profession if we glut.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm fearful that that's a direction we're going. I see the trend.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
And then we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago with work-life imbalance, how important it is, your personal responsibility to make sure you have some balance between your work life and your home life. Okay. All right, let's talk specifically about healthcare job stressors, things that are specific to us. These were the top 3 things that provided the most stress on our particular positions. Of course, it's that we deal with life and death, and that we have a continuous interaction with patients and their families. Maybe not us specifically, but we can, especially when we're taking care of an ECMO.
Yep.
And this was the biggest one, and this was the #1 stressor in a study of, I believe it was over 200 nurses, ICU nurses, was that there's often no solution to the patient's problem. Maybe the patient can't get better. Maybe they are stuck in a particular way that this is the way their life's going to be, or maybe they're not going to make it at all. And as healthcare professionals, we carry a lot of responsibility with that, not being able to help people, that the whole reason why we come to work. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, so these are, this was something that I guess I knew, but once I started reading about it, it really clicked into place and made sense that the predictors of what are going to stress you are very personal. They have to do with your personality. We've all heard of type A. We've all heard of the worrier, the one who's always doing the what ifs. Those 2 people, or those 2 personality types rather, they are more likely to have stress, because one, the personality type A person, often wants to control things, wants to do things themselves. I'm not looking at anybody specifically. And then the worrier, the person who's always thinking about the what if, not because they want to be necessarily glass half empty, but because they're trying to think of all the things that could go wrong so that they can be prepared. I think that a lot of perfusionists are that way in general.
Oh, I think so too.
We're always running through.
I don't think you go into this profession without being a type A worrier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have to be.
And when you're both, then you really have to be careful with your stressors that you're going to be causing yourself. They can be situational. A case we do every single day might not be the same kind of stressor for a different kind of case. Maybe you're not used to doing, a certain job task. You know how to do it, but you don't do it on a regular basis. And so then you can put those stressors on yourself, just trying to remember the routine, and you want to do your very best. Or maybe you're working with someone that you're not familiar with, or they don't speak up, and so you can't hear them, or those types of things. Or someone who maybe doesn't have the best skill level, and then so you worry about that. So those can be very situational. Has to do with your own personal skills. What are you comfortable with? What are your experiences, whether they be personal experiences or professional experiences? And then what are your awareness of your triggers? This was something that was brought up many times as being extremely important. It's all right to acknowledge that when I work with this certain person, I get a little on edge. And if you acknowledge that, then you can go into it knowing that you might have some stressors, and that can help you either lessen the stress or even prevent the stressors from taking hold. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the 3 ways that stress can affect you. First off, the health symptoms of physical stress, the physical symptoms that you can have from stress. So you can have headaches, high blood pressure, chest pain, indigestion, insomnia, muscle aches and tension. You wake up with that stiff neck. You have that migraine from all the constriction that is going on from your
all tight.
Exactly. Fatigue, weight gain, weight loss, and a change in sex drive. All right, here's some of the most common mental things: feeling sad, feeling anxious, having irritability, having a lack of motivation because you have that opinion of, I'm not going to be able to do it well anyway, or this is going to be a disaster kind of day, this case is going to go terrible, and so you have a lack of motivation to really take charge and try to take hold of the situation and do your very best. Restlessness. feeling overwhelmed and out of control. Again, the loss of control is one of the major themes in feeling stress. And memory loss.
Mm-hmm. And I forget things a lot. But do you know that
some of that can be from being the stretched too thin and too busy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the acute stress that it just goes on for such a long time. You know,
maybe so. But I didn't know if you knew this or not, and I learned it, and you're going to hear about it again when I give my presentation. But there is such a thing as an amotivation, or a not, you know, you're non-motivated. Amotivation syndrome actually exists as a diagnosis.
Really?
Yes, it does.
So you're not able to be motivated?
No, you can be, but you are doing something. You're taking substances that create this syndrome. At least it used to be believed.
Okay.
But it's still a recognized syndrome, amotivation syndrome.
Huh. Okay. All right. And then lastly, how does all of this play out? You know, you might exercise less, have anger outburst, procrastination. You might socially isolate. Substance abuse, whether it be, you know, drinking more, smoking more, even drugs, avoiding people, situations, sleep disturbances, sleeping too much because you're depressed perhaps, sleeping too little because you're restless, and changing eating patterns, you know, eating more, eating less. All right, so chronic stress and disease, that's what I really want to talk about. These are the diseases that can develop from those chronic stress situations. Depression, anxiety, diabetes, heart disease, irritable bowel syndrome, which I thought was really interesting because I had to think about why that would be. And if you think about your fight or flight response, what's happening is you are
cholinergic.
What?
Cholinergic.
Well, right, you're diverting blood from your colon, and so therefore, if you are stress eating, which we're going to get to in a minute, you can then cause problems in your bowel because there's not enough going on down there, but you're still continuing to eat, which makes perfect sense. Yeah. Okay. Obesity, extreme weight loss, and some skin disorders. All right. So how do we get to be stress-free? It's not possible. I think we all know that, and that's okay because, like we talked about before, some mild.
I just read that.
You just read that.
Yeah.
Some mild stressors are good for us and can be motivating. Okay, so we know that prolonged stress isn't good. So what are the benefits of managing the stress since we can't get rid of it? Well, there's health benefits. We can protect ourselves from developing certain diseases, or at least increasing the likelihood of developing those diseases. We can have better job performance, satisfaction, higher personal life satisfaction, and the development of resilience, which I think we all know what that word means, but it's actually a medical term for your ability to be able to go back to your normal state. So for an athlete, you know, someone, perhaps a runner, they're sprinting and their heart rate's going to increase, but they're trained, and so when they're done, how long does it take them to get from that really high exertion heart rate to their resting heart rate?
So recovery time is shortened. That's
exactly.
Resilience.
Right, but it can also do with your mental state. What is your resilience to recover from that bad day, from that horrible case? And so managing your stress will actually help you develop this resilience.
Yeah, because I've seen that too with my own personal life, where you have something occur that is stressful, and you know, I might have the stress reaction to it along with somebody standing right next to me, but when the stress is gone or the event is over, I may come back to a baseline sooner or later compared to somebody else.
Exactly.
And that's what you're saying is your resilience.
Right.
Your ability to go back to a normal physical or psychological state.
Exactly, which is one of the main benefits of stress management. That because we're not going to be able to get away from stress, so we have to learn to be able to be more resilient. Okay, so here's just touching on some techniques. There is a whole lot of information out there. Of course, you can do relaxation techniques, you know, even things like hobbies, you know, reading a book, knitting, whatever it is that you like to do, playing golf. Physical activity, going for a brisk walk, running, all of those things are going to be a natural stress reliever because you are exerting energy, and then the exertion of that energy changes your hormone levels. Mm-hmm. And of course, social support. Do you have people to talk to about it? Do you have a buffer? That's having your social support system can be a real big buffer for being able to handle stress. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's what the whole talks is about eating and stress. And there is a whole lot of data and lots of studies that are being done about when people are stressed and what they want to eat. It's kind of what you talked about before. They are known to choose things that are more pleasurable, those junk food things, mm-hmm. things you wouldn't normally eat, whether that be sugary things or McDonald's or more coffee. Caffeine is one of the worst
You need
things.
the dopamine.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, really.
Yep, so there was a study done and with mice, and there's been some human studies too, but I thought the mice one was really great. They did particular stressors to make the mice upset, and they provided regular type of food that they would eat and then more indulgent type of food of whatever a mouse would think is indulgent. And the stressed ones always went for the indulgent food, and the non-stressors went to their normal food, even when provided those other choices.
Wow.
Yeah. And I believe there was one study done with, I think this one was actually done with people, but it was up to about, I think it was around 400 calorie difference in just this one type of response, the stressors versus the non-stressors of people eating, of what the stressor is going to eat more, and intake more to try to deal with that stress. And that here was and of course that would be, comfort foods and really calorie dense things.
Could I ask, is that just, out of curiosity, is there a reason why they choose those? In other words, is the reason they choose it because they think they need that rapid energy source, that you think that physiologically it's kind of like it's not really a conscious thought, or is it because it brings a sense of comfort?
Comfort.
It's comfort.
Comfort and calm. And even in the absence of hunger and the lack of actual need for eating, people keep eating. Mm-hmm. And that's the danger. That's the problem, and that's how it's linked. High stress is linked to obesity. Mm-hmm. And if you're already overweight or you're already obese, it's even worse because you already have spikes in insulin problems. Mm-hmm. This quote I thought was really nice. It's, the stressed brain expresses both a strong drive to eat and an impaired capacity to inhibit eating, which together is a potent formula for obesity.
And an impaired capacity. Yeah.
So not only are you going to eat the bad things, you're not going to stop because you're not hungry anyway. It's not that kind of drive. So the role of nutrition, there's a whole field of medicine out there that looks at the whole person. It's called integrative medicine, and sometimes they might incorporate, West kind of medicine in it. But really what I looked into it about was just the nutrition plays a big role in not eliminating stress, but in how your body's going to react to the stress. And these were the things that I found had the most straightforward information about how they can help you. Anything from boosting your immune system, lowering your cortisol levels, ingesting complex carbohydrates, not those sugar fixes, but things that are harder to digest, and that will increase your serotonin levels, which is a good calming and also help control blood pressure. Magnesium can help people sleep, which we know sleep is a very important part of managing stress. Our fatty acids, dark chocolate is known to help with anxiety. Oatmeal, also serotonin levels, and lots of different herbal teas can help with anxiety and sleeplessness. So the main thing is we have to utilize our resources for workplace stress. We go to our employers. Do we lean on our employees? Do we talk to our employees about, or our coworkers rather, about how they can help us. Maybe we need more help with our workload. Maybe we need further education or training. Or maybe if it's a toxic work environment, you can go to your managers or human resources. Personal, do you have that family and friends that you can confide in, that you can talk about your stressors with, that you take vacation or time off, that you seek health professionals with integrative medicine who's going to look at not just the results of your problem, but what's causing that problem. And then, if needed, seeing a mental health care provider. And leading that healthy lifestyle, getting those stress reliefs through exercise and making healthy food choices. These are all my references from it, and that's it.
Very good, very good. I'd like to spend some time talking about this if we can. I'm probably, just to let the audience know, and also the guys over there, the producer and stuff, I'll probably make an adjustment on the schedule. I think tomorrow I'm giving a talk on, supposed to give a talk on telemonitoring, but to be frank with you, I don't think I can do that talk. So I'm going to probably postpone mine from today and put it for tomorrow, and then you and I could just have it, because this is a very good topic, and I don't want to cut it short.
Okay.
And just discuss this if we can. So you mentioned cortisol level twice, and I've heard that cortisol levels are very important in and influential in coronary heart disease. What do you know about that, and what can you sort of share or elucidate further?
Well, I'm certainly no expert, but what I found in my research was, well, at first, I think many people may know who know me that I've recently lost some weight. And so I've read all kinds of things, what you need to eat, how you need to exercise, all those sorts of things. And cortisol always comes up as high cortisol levels always comes up as being an indicator for people who hold on to abdominal excess fat, and not just the vanity fat, but the deep fat within your vessels, and that is a huge health risk. And it all relates to, well, you can have some sort of hormone imbalance, of course, but the stress is what most of the research I read about was, because often, not just being stressed at work, let's say you have a great work, home life, all of those sorts of things, but you're stressed about getting in shape, or you're stressed about losing those pounds, then you end up increasing your cortisol level, and then you're still holding on to those pounds. It's like you're defeating exactly all the work that you're doing. So you continue doing calorie deficit, you're doing more exercise, burning more energy, and you're still not having your results. And it can be very much related to that. And then with heart disease, the cortisol levels can cause people to increase their lipid activity, and that's how I believe it is related to heart disease.
And it's also inflammatory, right?
Yes, of course.
Pro-inflammatory.
Right.
I think that's where I was trying to go with it, is that, and I couldn't think of it at the time, but really, because there's a lot of people that think that inflammation, it's an inflammatory process that is a major contributor to atherosclerotic heart disease.
Absolutely.
And that
a lot of the material that I read caused stress was they actually called it, in what happens to your body with stress was just the inflammatory response. They just went at it from that exact perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And tomorrow when I do the cannabis, I do bring up a lot of that, the anti-inflammatory properties and how they interact and work with heart disease. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit, if I can, about chronic worry and stress, work-related stress. How much of that, and what do you think can be done for the person who frets about work, especially with our jobs? You leave work and you can't leave work behind, and then you go home, and so you've left the stressful situation, but the stressful situation leaves with you. You've left it, but it's coming with you. It's kind of like that advertisement for Crohn's, you know, where you see the thing, the shadow, and they're taking some drug to make the shadow go away. It's always there, though. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that goes into learning stress management techniques, and there's a lot of them out there. And just that's again going to be a personal decision, because yoga may work for somebody, but if you don't enjoy yoga, it's not
Goat yoga, that'd be good. Goat yoga, but
it's not going to work for you if you don't enjoy it.
Right.
Or for me, I like to run when I'm stressed, and it's even if I'm stressed when I start running. But then before I know it, I'm not stressed anymore. It may take a couple miles, may take half an hour, but at the end of it, I'm not stressed anymore. And that's because I've decided that that's going to be my stress reliever.
And so, you can't think about things. You're running. You're worried about breathing, moving.
You'd be surprised. Sometimes you're thinking about, when is this over? My feet hurt.
Yes, but you're not thinking about the stressful. You're not thinking about work.
Right.
You're thinking that.
Even if you start that way, for me, it works to clear my mind.
Yes.
And so I think that is one of the most important things that people can do who have workplace stress is figure out something where they can escape. You know, a couple years ago, maybe it's been 5 years now, there was this new trend that everyone was getting these adult coloring books and coloring, at home. And because it's a major stress reliever, because you're thinking about, the act, it's a task you don't have to think too hard about. We all know how to do it.
I get very angry. I'm not a good colorer.
See, that doesn't work for you.
No, it wouldn't work for me.
But the point is that a lot of people tried that, and it's a great stress reliever. Some people like to read, some people meditate.
It doesn't matter what it is.
It doesn't matter.
Find something.
Right. It's very personal. It could be gardening. Gardening for me would stress me out, but lots of people think it's very relaxing. And so it's important that you develop your routine of what's going to help you de-stress.
And I think you brought something up also in your talk, which I was very interested in, and it had to do with the responsibilities of the employee, but the responsibilities of the employer. And so I'm going to come at this from that perspective, if I can, and if you don't mind indulging me on this. But I worry about, are people who get these certain cases, like I'll see a case and I'll say, is anybody going to go help them? Are they going to get a lunch break? Are they going to? But of course, I have somebody who's in a position that manages that, and I know does a great job with it, and probably thinks that same thing. But I think about it because as the employer, you want to make sure people have an opportunity to use the bathroom, step away from the situation, have something to eat. Because in our job, in our profession, it is not unheard of to go from 7 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 on a patient who comes in for an elective procedure and is now crashing, and you rushing to get everything put together and do that case and not see the light of day until it could be 8, 9, 10, 12, 16. I've seen it go longer, hours with nothing to eat, nothing to drink, and no ability to use the bathroom. That can't be. Now, I know that doesn't happen every day. Sometimes in some practices it happens more often than in others. We're lucky. We don't necessarily see that very often, but it can happen. And for some people it happens more frequently, or they're an independent practice and they have to plan everything out. Even their biological systems have to be planned out to accommodate for their work schedule, because there is no one there to help them. How do I, as an employer, manage all of the people that work in our group so that I'm meeting those basic needs that they have for their health, given the uniqueness of our business? We don't have an office. You don't come. I can't say everybody's joining the gym and we're paying for it and we're all going to go together and we're going to do this. We're going to stop here and go there and do this. We can't do that. That's just not our business. So that's not feasible. But what are the things that you think a good employer given perfusion as a business, because that's what this is about, can do to help facilitate a healthier, less stressful lifestyle for their employees?
Well, I think you have a unique perspective on this, not unique from others, but a very unique perspective versus as being a small business owner versus being a big institutional. Because, when you're working directly for a hospital, the person at the top is probably not worried about my bathroom break or my lunch break, okay?
Right.
They don't personally know me. It's going to fall to the managers. So I think you would more personally align with, say, nurse, a nurse manager or perfusion manager or something like that.
Agreed.
I think open communication would be especially important for you because you can't just pop by your office, like you could if you were working directly in one institution and that's where your manager was, and you could come by and say, hey, I have a concern, these things are going on. Yesterday I didn't get a bathroom break and I planned as best I could. What can we do about this? I think for you, just letting people know that their concerns are welcome and that you want to hear them. You don't have the ability to pop by each of our cases, every day or even once a week,
Then nobody wants me to, so that's a different issue.
But I think that's a great way to be able, if people can voice their concerns, then sometimes that will solve the problem itself. But coming to you and saying, hey, I have this idea, last time I was doing this oxygenator change out, I did it great, but then I had a little bit of worry that, if I needed this or that, I didn't have an extra hand and the nurse was already busy. And so then they've expressed it to you and you'd say, hey, why don't we always do that at shift change or, whatever it may be. And I think that's a great way to...
I think good communication. I think you're right about that. I think communication has to be both ways. I think that the employer, and I do feel a sense of responsibility to helping encourage, is really all I think I can do, encourage people to live a healthier lifestyle, and that and have an open door policy that you can come talk to me about whatever you need to talk about. I do feel that we have that, but I also feel that a lot of this is a personal responsibility. It is a very personal responsibility.
Yeah,
and
from the employer and from the employees.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to work on my own. I have to be healthy too.
Well, remember my talk about
and want to be
workplace balance, or work-life balance rather, and it is. I lost my train of thought. It's the best way to motivate employees to have a work-life balance, which this falls right into what we're talking about here, is to demonstrate that yourself. If you are calling people in the middle of the night, emailing, if you're always staying late as that manager, you're showing people that that's the expectation. For an employee...
That's a very good point.
For an employee that...
Because I'm guilty of that.
...wants to be pleasing to their employer. Especially, there's a lot of people out there who, that... Of course, I'm sure there's people out there who want to just do the minimum job they can do, but we're speaking to...
We don't have anybody like that.
Yeah, we're speaking to the people who are really interested in doing the best that they can, and the examples being set by their administrators, by their managers, by their leaders, on what is expected of me to be successful in your eyes, and and how can I be viewed positively in this work environment?
You bring up a really good point, because I am so guilty of that. I will call people, and I think I called you I don't know what time it was. What time was it?
I don't know.
It was late.
I don't keep up with that.
It was in the middle of the night.
It wasn't. It was 10 o'clock. That's not the middle of the night.
Didn't you do the night shift last night?
Oh, what? I was working. That's not the same.
Okay.
You were.
I called you when you were working.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'm clarifying now. So it's not that you were already up working, so I called you.
That's different.
That's different. You're talking about calling you at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, or 4 o'clock in the morning, or 7 o'clock at night while you're trying to have dinner, to just start talking about work.
Right. Or
without any regard for the fact that you have a life.
right. And
Yeah,
then
that's
this is
different. I don't do that.
No, no.
I've done it. I've been guilty of it
well, sure.
because sometimes I get
Everybody
going.
is sometimes. I mean, even
But I try to respect boundaries. I do.
that happens to me too, you know,
Yeah.
especially the way we communicate with text messaging. You know, you think of something, it's not really something you need to formalize in an email, but you don't want to lose that thought and you just send a text out and you're like, ooh, it's like dinner time.
Yeah.
That could have waited till tomorrow. I should
Yeah.
have just written it down and, you know, you're not really trying to be invasive in that. And,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But it could even go into, for, you know,
And for some people, that doesn't matter.
right.
For others, it really does matter.
Absolutely.
And you don't know sometimes. And sometimes it doesn't matter to this person 9 times out of 10, but then the 10th time, it does matter.
Right.
I mean, it's just interesting. You never know.
You don't. But even so much, let's say you worked, you had an office, and we all reported to the office in the morning before our cases. If you're scheduled to come in at, 6:30, 7, but no matter what time I got there, because I had a really early case and I'm getting there early because I'm getting set up, you're there at 4 a.m., that is sending the signal that is the expectation. And so then the employee can feel like that's what they also need to be doing every time, not for this specific time. Or you're always staying late, not to handle a specific situation. It's just you always stay late. You're always there 2 hours after when, your normal time is to leave. Those types of things.
That's not good. That's not good, and it's not fair.
Right.
Attachment. Let me see. What does he got? What do you got for me? Hold on. I got a text from the producer over there. A question.
We have a question from the audience?
It says, I believe, it's a comment. I believe as a line manager, you should lead by example.
Yeah.
As a lot of employees follow their managers. Well, I've said that a million times. How many times have I said that? That if you go to a place and the people are mean and unfriendly and unwelcoming and just unhelpful, they're malignant. You can almost guarantee, not always, but in my view, my experience has been, you can almost guarantee that's how leadership in that place is, and that's how they're treated.
Right. And
almost always, not always, but almost always.
And even to that point, let's say you have a fantastic manager, administrator, supervisor, whatever. Like they show you respect. They do lots of things to make you feel appreciated. They welcome, your opinions, have an open door policy, but they allow that kind of behavior to go on.
Yes.
Signals to everyone there that that's the culture of that place, and it's okay. Even though you would never behave that way, it's okay for these other people to behave in a way that is negative or always late or those types of things. And those can cause a lot of workplace stress.
Or versus trying to get everyone around you to be successful and being helpful and being kind to people to make them better, helping each other be better.
Helping
they
people
are
grow.
always looking to find what you did wrong.
Exactly.
And that, I can't even begin to imagine working in a place like that, where every time you turn around, somebody is pointing out your deficiency. And it's horrible. I've been in those situations, and I know. I want to talk about food again before we wrap this up. We're going to have about 5 more minutes. How do you deal with, look, I mean, it's just a reality, because I've done it. I've been in hospitals before and I say, I'm buying pizza for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, that's, if I said I'm buying broccoli for everybody, it's not going to go over well. How do you deal with that? How do you balance what you know to be the right thing to do versus the wrong thing to do?
Well, I think that comes to personal choice. So pizza, or whatever it is not inherently bad. It's how many times you have that pizza. So it's up to it's a personal choice for whoever it's being provided for. If you're providing pizza and they don't want pizza, don't eat the pizza,
But should we be more sensitive to that and say, hey, does anybody want salad instead of pizza? Should we be more aware?
I think being aware of that would just
pizza's great, it is, but it isn't good for you. It's not. It's just dough, it's bread. It's just just a bunch of carbs with some tomato sauce and maybe some meat.
I mean, I think offering salad or something like that,
Some other option.
yeah, it's very considerate, and then people can take you up on that.
Have you found this whole episode with the coronavirus to have made your ability to maintain your healthy diet and lifestyle more difficult or unchanged?
I think it's more difficult.
You do. Tell me why.
And that's personally for me. So I have a group of women that live a similar lifestyle. We don't have the same kind of jobs, but we eat typically the same way. We work out in this certain way, and some of them have really thrived in it because they have found they're able to organize their time different, and so maybe they have more time to make the types of meals that they want to make, or have more time to do that exercise. But for me personally, I have struggled, not because of the time issue. We always have days where we have time and days where we don't have time. That's just the nature of our business and our schedule. But I find if I am focused on, okay, I'm on call tomorrow, I'm definitely going to have to get my workout done at 4 in the morning because who knows what my day might be like. I'm going to have my meals prepped before and have all that ready before. I'm very organized. With having a lot more time, I found, because we'd had less cases, and so I had more time.
There's 5 tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah.
Come
on, number 6.
I found that the lack of routine messed up my personal routine. But that's just a personality thing, because I like to know this is what I typically do on my call days, this is what I don't do, those sorts of things.
And now everything's just sort of chaotic because we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And we went from a somewhat predictable, hectic schedule, but predictably hectic, to nothing, to slowly coming back, and now tomorrow it appears it's going to go right back to hectic. But now the question is this going to be the same predictable hectic schedule, or is it going to be hectic squared because of the dip that we had from the lack of cases?
I think it's going to be hectic squared, and just completely...
Which is going to bring a lot of stress to a lot of people.
It is, but I think...
It is.
I think also it might actually be comforting to some people because they know that this is the way to getting back to a kind of normal.
Yes.
And that we all have productive work to do.
It's another step in the process of getting back to normal.
Okay, so I dined out recently and haven't dined out in a long time.
Did you really?
Yeah.
In the restaurant?
In the restaurant, they're doing
Did you cut a hole in the mask?
No.
No.
All the, they're doing the precautions. I don't know how many tables are in this restaurant, but a few. And they're socially distancing you and all of that. And normally it's a regular restaurant I go to, and they provide great service, and I love it. And I gotta say, I think the time off from their normal work has affected their routine too, because I had really weird service and there were only 4 tables there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everybody's trying to get back into their methods and timing and all that kind of stuff, and I think it's going to be challenging in the beginning.
I think it's going to restaurant workers have it rough because they depend on tips, and the more people you have in that restaurant, the more the more customers, the more that's just the way it works.
Sure.
And so for them, restaurant workers have been, and even restaurant industry has been just decimated as a result of this in a bad way.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate because I like going out to eat.
Yeah.
I enjoy it, and I like being tot-tot a little bit.
What I kept saying to my husband when he was giving me the eyes, like, why is it taking so long? It's just fajitas.
Yeah.
I was like, let's just enjoy the fact that we are somewhere where we are not washing the dishes, and let's just enjoy the experience.
Exactly. But that's why they made paper plates. So I'm kind of that kind of guy. But one last question. 3 minutes left. One last question. Are these pre-processed shipped foods like Nutrisystem and I guess Weight Watchers has one, those various different programs that they have out there where they send you that food? Is that good food? Is it good to eat?
I think it depends. I use a meal prep delivery service sometimes, and they're local, but there's also some some of my friends that use ones that are national, so it would be something like Weight Watchers, but they're typically geared for, not that they're not geared for weight loss because they're healthy meals, but they're typically marketed more to like a athletic type community versus people who are, you know, Googling how do I lose weight kind of thing.
Because I'm thinking about the single perfusionist who, well, maybe the married perfusionist with a new baby at home, or auto transfusionist, new baby at home, busy schedule, running around all the time. Both parents are working. They got to take care of the baby. That's the most important thing. Maybe they have other kids at home too, and they're taking care of everybody but not themselves, and they have to go to work. They don't have time to make their lunch.
Right.
They're going to go to work. They're going to eat junk. Would they be better off having that as their lunch so that they were bringing nutrition with them to work versus just eating whatever they could find at the hospital or the cafeteria?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it depends, the nutritional value of that depends on which service you decide to go with. But
so they're not all the same.
Well, I think it depends on what you necessarily need. I think in particular, some of those ones that are geared towards weight loss have, they're too small of portions. They're more into, you know, extreme restriction of calories, which especially if you're in a high stress job, you need the nutrients to be able to power your body through. But I always plan to have my nutrition with me.
Are you a big believer in vitamins and supplements?
I do take a few. I don't know, like, you know, I read a lot about it, and I'm kind of on the fence about some things. And actually recently when I was doing an ECMO shift, the pharmacist popped by and she was chatty, and we started talking about it too. And she happened to be from Asian descent, and so she said, you know, we have a lot of supplements and things in my culture but I don't believe in any of them. And so she kind of had her ideas from her background, which I thought was really interesting. So I don't know.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are a few that I take regularly, and I feel like I have had response from them.
What do you take?
I take magnesium at night. I think it helps me sleep. Take vitamin C.
For the antioxidant properties?
Yeah, and I used to take omega-3s, but I just altered my diet so that I'm getting them in a more natural source. Because honestly, they kind of upset my stomach a little bit. But I knew that they were what you do to be heart healthy, and so I'd been taking them for years.
Did you know that farm-raised tilapia has a negative influence on your omega-3s? That it has to be wild caught?
I know that most things are better if they're wild caught, and I know that what I've read, and sorry to any tilapia lovers, is that is one of the least nutrient dense fish available.
Really? I didn't know that. Even wild caught is still the least nutrient dense.
Not that it's bad for you necessarily,
Now,
but
farm raised tilapia is bad for you. It actually lowers your omega-3s.
wow.
It's bad for you, actually bad for you.
Wow.
So don't eat farm raised tilapia. Okay, 1801. Tomorrow, same time, same station.